think it's acknowledging all the emotions. I love the fact that you said that there's hundreds of emotions, but a lot of us don't realize that. A lot of us don't realize there's hundreds of emotions. And so really befriending your emotions, looking at your emotions, naming your emotions, being curious about your emotions versus judging them.
This is Dr. Meenal, and welcome to Uncover Your Eyes, where we uncover reality. As a mom and eye doctor, I want to know it all. Cancer. That's a really hard word to stomach. For some of us, it has affected us, our family members, or our friends. As healthcare providers, it can be even harder. We're trying to help others, but help ourselves at the same time. Cancer comes with so many emotions: fear, anxiety, stress. And sometimes some of us feel it's even taboo to talk about it. If we don't seek help, or we don't seek the help of each other, we won't be able to get through these roller coaster of emotions that cancer comes with. So today I have a guest with us who is such an amazing person, Shelyna Khalfan. Shelyna is a certified cancer journey coach and a registered occupational therapist. She works with patients with cancer to help them maximize their physical health and their well-being, and her practice is called A Mindful Path. Welcome, Shelyna. Well, thank you, Shelyna, for being on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Meenal. I'm excited to be here.
Oh no, of course, of course. So tell me your story. Like why get into this field, um,
Mhm.
and become a cancer coach.
Yeah. My story started several years ago. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to give
Yes.
you context. So, as you mentioned in your introduction of me, I've worked as an occupational therapist, but my personal connection to cancer started many years ago when my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I'm the eldest of three daughters. I'm the only one who works in healthcare. And so I kind of nominated myself to go with him to his appointments. I would ask questions, I would advocate for him, and I started learning more about cancer that way. In 2012, he passed away from his prostate
Sorry.
cancer. But a week before he passed away, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And if I'm honest, that's what really shook me, because I've always thought my mom was very healthy. And at that
Yeah.
time, I believed that healthy people who eat well and exercise won't get sick. So that shocked me, and the timing really
Right.
shocked me.
Right.
And so my father passed away, and then my mom began her journey with cancer. And so I felt like I was learning more. I was learning more about cancer because I watched my father navigate it, and then I started watching my mother, and I was learning all this. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this is really equipping me to be a better therapist. I can really empathize with not only my patients, but their children, because I have life experience on what it's like
Right.
to watch your parents go through cancer. So I thought that was the learning. And then in 2012, I found a lump and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 43 years old, and I was shocked because I thought I was too
Yeah.
young. I was too young to get cancer. And so I started my own treatment for cancer.
Right.
And if I'm honest, I kind of I approached it with a lot of positivity because I felt like I had
Mm.
real knowledge from my work, and I felt I had personal experience with watching my parents.
Your
So I
parents.
kind of started it with a lot of optimism. But if I'm honest, I wasn't prepared for the impact of how it impacts you, like all the emotions, the thoughts, the fears, and how it impacts your whole being. To be honest.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
everything. Yeah, your
everything.
life, your family, your day to day, just thoughts and
Yeah.
everything. Do you feel that you can open up to people and talk about it openly, or do you feel like there's almost this? I don't know if it's fear or stigma, or people don't want to talk about it. Like, how do you feel about that?
I think my answer now is different from what it was 7 years ago
Yeah,
because it's been 7 years. I think now I'm very open, I'm very transparent. And I do believe there is owning your story and telling your story is healing.
Right.
But at that time, I chose not to share it with a lot of people. I didn't come out on Instagram and talk about my cancer diagnosis for sure. I kept it private. I kept it personal with just my family, with some close friends. And I did that to protect myself and my
Right.
family. You know, it
Right.
was a choice I made, not out of so much judgment or
Right.
fear of what people would think. I just didn't want to be bombarded with questions
Questions.
and other people's energy because I saw that happen as I watched my parents. I saw people asking me, asking them, and I saw the impact it would have on all of us. And I just didn't want that. And so I chose to just share it with a few people. And as time moved on and I was beginning to process what was happening, then I started sharing it.
Right. And I don't think it's something, that people should be ready to share on Instagram. Like, I don't feel that's the right sort of means to share anything about yourself or something personal. But I almost feel that people I know that are going through cancer, sometimes it's hard to just share it with your friends, like you were saying, let alone your family. But sometimes it's hard to share those emotions with friends because they don't always understand what you're going through. Or they might be afraid because they may not be able to say the right thing or something may affect you and vice versa. It almost gets that everyone's tiptoeing around each other, right? So it becomes a difficult process. Not only are you navigating either cancer for your family or for yourself,
Right.
but you're navigating friendships or your social circle all over again. And that's for me, that's what I feel is so difficult. With that experience. But in terms of, cancer coach, like you are a cancer coach, like how did, like, first of all, I didn't know that profession existed. And I'm just going to
Mhm.
be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't know that people can reach out to a cancer coach.
Right.
So tell me about that
Yes.
and what that means.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that question. I appreciate your honesty because I didn't know what a cancer coach either was.
Right.
So after I finished my treatment, I felt I was fortunate not to work during my treatment. And I finished my treatment. I took the summer off and I rested. And then I went back to work as an
Right.
occupational therapist. And if I'm honest, that's when I really struggled. That's when I noticed I wasn't myself. And I was
Right.
really angry about that because I wanted to go
You
back
wanted
to
to,
my old self. I
right.
wanted to have beat the cancer and not have it impacted me. But I noticed I was irritable, I was tired, I was angry, and mostly I was angry at myself for not being the same. And so I reached for support. I didn't know what a cancer coach was. I met a psychotherapist. You know, it helped, but it wasn't exactly what I needed. I met a life coach and I did a few sessions with her, not related to cancer, just about my behaviors and my fears. And at the end of one of the sessions, she asked me, "Well, what do you want to do now?" And honestly, that question, I thank her always for that question because it came so quickly. I said, well,
Yeah.
I want to share what my experiences have been going through cancer, and I want to help others so they don't feel alone. They don't
Yes.
feel stuck. They don't feel powerless. So she looked at me and she goes, oh, so you want to be a cancer coach? And I said, what's
What is
that?
that?
What is that? And she goes,
Yeah.
I don't know. Google it. So I Googled it, and the first institute that I found was called the Cancer Journey Institute. It's the only institute in the world that trains cancer journey
Wow.
coaches. And I loved the website. I loved the story behind the institute. And so I booked an interview call with the founder. And I loved her positivity, her energy, her optimism. She's a five-time survivor of different type of cancers. And so I signed up right away. I was like, this is for me. This is exactly what I'm looking
What I
for.
need.
And so I signed up to be a cancer coach. And I started the initial training program and then I continued with their certification program. And the more I learned, the more I knew that this is exactly
What
what
you
I
need.
was, what I
What you
was,
were
I
looking
was,
for. Your
what
next,
I
yeah.
was looking for. Yeah. And interestingly enough, I was doing it to help other people. But what
And it helped
actually
you.
happened, it helped me. Exactly. And I didn't even know that I needed help.
And how beautiful is that? Like your passion becomes your job. Isn't that what we all look for, right? Like when we were in our 20s or I don't know, and our parents wanted us to become whatever they wanted us to become,
Yes.
right? We just did it because it was the name or that's what they wanted us to do.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but to actually make your job your or your passion your job, how like that's just success right there. That's just success,
Honestly,
right?
yeah. I feel like it's a gift, honestly. And a lot of
Absolutely.
times people will ask me, "Oh, how can you do it? It's so sad, it's so heavy." And I'm like, but it's an honor. It's an honor. And there's nothing wrong with sadness. There's nothing wrong with those emotions. It's actually an honor to be a part of somebody's journey
Journey.
because this is real. This is real, and not many people can be real with you when you're on
And it
this journey.
impacts your whole life, right?
It
So it's
does.
real and it impacts your job, your family, your lifestyle, your social circle, like everything, right? And I know I have a lot of healthcare professionals that, I've worked with in the past, I currently work with, and a lot of them are going through it themselves or going through it, with family members.
Mm,
And, there's, I don't know, 100 emotions, I want to say. There's grief,
yeah.
there's anxiety, there's
Yes.
fear, there's everything.
Yes.
Like what I know it's hard to sum it up, but what are some, day-to-day shifts or changes that they can make just help them get through the day? As you were saying, sometimes it's hard to just get through the day. Is
Yeah.
there any advice that you can offer for them?
Oh, so much, so much.
I know.
I think the first is to acknowledge that this is a journey. Where you are today is not going to be where you are forever, and you really have to accept that. That if I'm feeling low today, it doesn't mean I'm going to be like stuck forever.
Right.
So just embrace the moment. I think it's accepting where you are in the moment. I think it's acknowledging all the emotions. I love the fact that you said that there's hundreds of emotions, but a lot of us don't realize that. A lot of us don't realize there's hundreds of emotions. And so really befriending your emotions, looking at your emotions, naming your emotions, being curious about your emotions versus judging them or suppressing them. Because I definitely suppressed a lot of emotions during my treatment because I wanted to be that strong mom. I wanted to be that positive model patient that didn't complain and was very compliant and had good outcomes. And I didn't want my children to see me cry or
And see you
struggle
weak.
or complain and weak. Exactly. I believed by showing emotion, that was a sign of weakness. And since then, I'm actually teaching the opposite. I'm saying, you know what? Acknowledge all those emotions,
Yeah.
and that's what's going to lead you through this. It's by feeling your emotions in a safe way with someone that you can
That's such
trust.
great advice, like even in general, right? Just we
Absolutely.
are, I don't know, I feel like as a society, it's ingrained in us and
Yes.
taboo or it's a
Yes.
stigma to not express your emotions. Don't show you're weak. Don't show you're depressed. Don't show these feelings. Um, but if we don't pick up as a community and show and express our emotions without judgment, that's
Right.
huge. Um,
Yes.
how are we going to move forward as a
Um,
society? Or we're just going to all land up, very met with mental health issues,
absolutely.
and not be able to get through life. So seek the help of each other, I think, and talk,
Exactly.
and even your own family, like you said, even your children, right? Um, if you can talk to them even, or just express, a few emotions because I think as parents, like I find at nighttime, I'm always telling my kids, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened in school. How do you feel? How do you feel? But the opposite is not happening, right? Isn't it so great to share?
Yes.
This is how I felt today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And admitting that I struggled through this situation and this is what I did, right? That's modeling emotional regulation. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about. Not having the perfect picture. It's embracing everything. And I mean, I think Brene Brown has done a tremendous research on emotions. And she has a wonderful book called Embracing Imperfections. I think it's been life changing, honestly, to acknowledge that we don't need to be perfect. We just need to be ourselves and share and learn and connect with one another. That's actually
Absolutely.
empowering
Yes.
versus pretending that we've got it all together because nobody does.
pretending that we have it all together. That's right.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
we all do. So,
I was just going to say some of us admit it and some of us don't, but it's a lot more empowering to let go of that facade.
yeah. It's almost liberating, like you said. It's just
Absolutely.
liberating. You feel authentic, you feel free, and that helps you get through kind of your own mental health struggles and your own emotions. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's absolutely. Sometimes I feel there's anxiety or stress or fear. I don't know exactly what the emotion is. It's a jumble of emotions around, the fear of the unknown with cancer,
Yes.
right? Whether
Yeah.
it's your parent or whether it's yourself or your close
Right.
friend, even,
Yeah.
it's the fear of what comes tomorrow or that procedure. Can
Yeah.
you share a little bit about those feelings?
Yeah, I think that those are normal feelings that people go through as you navigate a new experience or a new situation. And I think the first thing I would recommend is normalizing those emotions, that it's okay. It's part of the
Yeah.
process to be okay with them and to allow yourself to feel them and acknowledge them. I think the next thing I usually do on myself or my clients is I help them recognize what are the thoughts that you're associating with that emotion. What is the story that you are telling yourself about that emotion? So
Mhm.
I really take time to separate the story from the emotion and look at what's actually true. Because when we are in panic, when we are being given a diagnosis of cancer, that brings up so much fear in us from our own reading and from our own personal connections and stories we may know.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out of that spiral. And so it's important to kind of ground, acknowledge your emotions, think about the thoughts that are coming, and identify what's actually true. What is true in that moment? Like, a simple example would be like when I first went for chemotherapy, I did talk to a lot of people about what their experience was. And there were people who told me some scary stuff, right? That they ended up in ER or, that they fell walking to the bathroom. But I think what is important with that is to recognize they're not you
That's right.
and their story is not your story. But it takes a lot of consciousness and deliberation to be able to do that. And so that's what I mean, that you need to separate the fear story from the fear and identify what's true. And so for me, it was important for me to say, well, that person had other health factors. I know this information now. I'm going to equip myself with this knowledge so that I can experience a better outcome. So it's learning, right?
Right.
So there's lots of ways to handle anxiety about new procedures, and I think it's knowing what helps you, what works for you. I have some clients that like to research, they like to read the studies,
Mhm.
and I've learned that's what helps them. That's what gives them some level of control. For me, I like to do that, but in small doses. I like to connect with people who have been through it and take the pieces that sit well with me. And then I also know that I need quiet time. I need to kind of ground before I go to this scary procedure or this new procedure.
Right.
I need a support system with me that I feel comfortable
Yeah.
with. And I think like taking my husband during my chemo was wonderful because we had a lightheartedness. He would call it our, chemo dates. We would pack a lunch, we would
I
decide
love
to watch a
that.
show,
Yeah.
and he knew when I needed my quiet time during the therapy session and when I needed a laugh. So you need to support yourself with people who get you.
Get you. Yeah. That's, you know, I you mentioned earlier something about, panicking and that's kind of that immediate emotion to panic, whether you're going to chemo or whether you find out about, this new diagnosis or changes. And I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I read something that you had written somewhere and it said, converting that panic to power.
Yeah,
That was
that's
really powerful for me.
that's the
How,
key.
Shelyna, how?
Well,
Right?
that's,
That
that's the
was
million-dollar question, right? And I feel it's not just related to cancer, but life in general, because we all
yeah,
experience panic, right? So there's steps involved. It's like a foundation. The first step is always to stop. stop and recognize that there's panic happening inside you. You know, acknowledge the swirl, the racing thoughts, the heartbeat racing. Maybe you have sweaty palms. For me, I just feel like my voice gets louder, more shrill. I feel like my heart beating. So recognize that the panic is coming up and then stop. Stop what you're doing, quieten your mind. For me, it's breathing and just checking in with myself and giving me myself that time to kind of quiet down. So that's the first
Right.
step. And then in each step, there's multiple strategies or tools that I would teach people. I think the next step to go from panic to power is to locate where you are. Locate where you are on your cancer journey. One of the tools we have is the Cancer Journey Roadmap. It's an incredible map that I wish every person diagnosed with cancer, every caregiver gets to see, because this is a roadmap of every stage you're going to go through as a cancer patient or a survivor or a caregiver. And if you think about the purpose of a map, when we have a map, it gives us some comfort to know, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna go here, and this is what I'm gonna experience, and then I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go up here, and I'm gonna go down here. And so really locating where you are on your cancer journey in terms of the stage, where are you with your emotions? Where are you with your thoughts? That would be the next step to convert panic to power. And
Yeah.
then building on that, what I focus on doing is activating the person. A lot of times with this kind of diagnosis, you feel like a victim. You feel
Yeah.
like you have no
Yeah.
power, but that's
Right.
that's not true. You have a lot of power inside you. And so what I focus on is activating that power from within. We all have our innate strengths and talents. A lot of times we don't realize though what they are when we're panicking, but really having a conversation and gaining clarity on what it is that I bring to this experience, to this diagnosis. And for me, it was obviously, being a therapist, it was my skills that I learned from watching my parents, and then my own innate strengths. So that would be the next layer to convert panic to power. And then I think it's really learning to make powerful choices,
Yeah.
recognizing that you have choices and you can choose your perspective. I mean, as an optometrist, maybe you'll love that word of perspective, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
even the title of this is the perspective we hold is key,
Right.
right? Are you thinking of yourself with this cancer diagnosis as a victim? Are
Yeah.
you thinking of yourself as this? Okay, this is an opportunity for me to self reflect, to kind of figure out, how am I living life? What do I want to do with my life? What am I learning from this journey? Right? So recognizing that you get to choose your perspective and you get to choose a perspective that empowers you to move forward versus leaving you feel panicky and stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I I'm just thinking about myself when
Yeah.
you're, and I love the map idea. It's like that sense of direction.
Yes.
Just thinking about myself and well, firstly, a lot of the feelings that you talked about are similar. I suffer from anxiety, and a lot of those are anxiety symptoms as well, or anxiety attack symptoms.
Right.
But I'm the type of person that doesn't have confidence to open up to people about anything, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
anything that I'm going through. It
Right.
takes a lot, and it, just like yourself, it took me years to even talk about anxiety.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
how do we, I don't know how I did, but how do we, in general, gain that confidence to open up about these things, to that, that close by knit circle? Sometimes it's hard to just open up to your best friend, or
Mhm.
colleagues that you work with every day who are wondering why you're feeling like this. We don't
Mhm.
always have the confidence to talk to them. How do we
Mhm.
open up to them?
How do we start opening up to people we trust is the question,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I would say the first thing is to open up to ourselves and to really
Mm.
be honest and vulnerable with what it is we're experiencing and owning it. Again, it goes back to being okay, befriending all your emotions. I think when we're hesitant to share, it's like we are imposing a judgment on that
Right.
anxiety, right? So
Right.
it's coming from within. And that is going to create a narrative in our head that I'm going to guess that I am less than. Because
Right.
I have anxiety, I am less than. And that's not true. That's really not true. It's just a human emotion, and we are emotional beings,
Right.
whether we like to admit it or not. It's a conversation I have with a lot of people that there's nothing wrong with emotions. It's just learning to accept them and learning how to regulate them in a manner that feels safe for us.
Right.
So, going back to your question, I think my answer would be the first thing is to kind of really be okay yourself, be compassionate with yourself. And then I think it's a process, honestly, Amino. I think it's a process. I think it
Right.
took me years, like you implied as well, to embrace this concept and to share. And but what I did notice is once I started talking about emotions and within my own family, I noticed a ripple effect. I noticed I was encouraging vulnerability, and the impact was I was seeing that portrayed back to me. And that is a beautiful thing. Like, of
So,
course,
so
it's beautiful in
beautiful.
my client, but in my own family setting, for me to say, I'm feeling sad. I mean, I said it the other day at the dinner table. I said, I'm feeling a little bit anxious here, and so there was a conversation about it versus, well, you shouldn't be. Don't
Yeah.
feel anxious. There's nothing to feel anxious. A lot of times we want to help people, but we're doing a disservice to them because we're dismissing that natural emotion.
Right.
Instead, what we want to do is have a conversation with them. Okay, tell me about that anxiety. What does it feel like? What are you thinking? You
Right.
know?
And that I think is going back to society, right? Like we've always been ingrained that we don't express those emotions or we don't talk about those emotions. We should be
Yes.
these strong, people, whether you're women, a woman or a man, you should be strong, right?
Yeah.
And you should
Yeah.
be not expressing it to your family, but sometimes that is your outlet. That is the outlet. And like you said, it's a ripple effect. Once you start
Yeah.
talking about it, people will talk to you. And I'm sure people have, from your practice, like have heard about your practice and people have started opening up to even you, just wanting that sense of security from you. And that's such a beautiful feeling, right? I mean,
It
it's
is.
like you feel like you've done your job
Yeah,
and it's,
absolutely. I mean, the
or you've
space that
impacted others.
exactly. I think the one thing we can do is give a space to people to be,
Yeah.
and that's honestly the specialty of a cancer journey coach is that you can't just be with anybody. I mean, we try to be ourselves with our family, but sometimes we're not because I know I wasn't completely because I didn't want to worry them.
Right.
I didn't. I wanted to be strong. I didn't want to worry my husband. I didn't because they themselves have their own worry. And
Right.
so with the cancer journey coach or with, a good friend, you want that space where you can just be without judgment, without fear, and not even asking that person to take you out of that spot, out of
Right.
that feeling. It's just being okay to sit there with them in that emotion
In
and
that
then
moment.
look at it curiously.
Right. Do you have is there someone that you've interacted with as a patient of yours that you feel has really impacted their cancer journey? Is there any stories? I'm sure you encounter,
Yes.
so many emotions and things.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's so many that come to
Yeah.
mind. I think one that I worked with a few years ago is during the cancer journey coach, and she really learned the value of advocating for herself and speaking to her medical team about her concerns. That's one. I think another one with the same person is she learned to live today. A lot of times with cancer, we talk about living after the treatment is over, when we finished our treatment. And one thing I really try and encourage is live today.
Right.
What do you love to do? Let's do it today. And if you can't do it big, let's just find the experience that you're looking for. And so she was going through chemotherapy, but when we kind of talked about dream goals, one of her dream goals was like driving a convertible on the highway with her
Yeah.
hair let down and just the wind, completely
Yeah.
free. So the experience she was looking was for freedom. And so I'm like, okay, let's make this happen. And so she rented a car with her husband and she did that. And that is energizing. And and again, it's not waiting until after, it's living today. So that's another story. Another one is a nurse I worked with. And, we were doing our sessions and she realized after her treatment, she didn't want to go back to her shift job as a nurse, and there was a job coming up in an area she was interested in, and working with her to get past her fears that she couldn't do it. And then when she got the job, obviously that was incredibly rewarding to know that for her to know that she can have fear and work through her fears, not be paralyzed by her fears. And then now she's got this job. She's doing things differently. Her old ways was coming home, starting to cook right away, starting them to get there on their homework. And now she's pausing. She comes home and she's like, okay, let's go to the park. And she goes to the park with the kids and she goes, Shelyna, this is such a beautiful way to live. She goes, I know I didn't want the cancer, but for it to teach me this, I'm glad it taught me to pause. I'm glad it taught me to live because I'm enjoying life a lot more now.
Yeah, and it's that's just beautiful because I think that's not only with cancer diagnosis, but with any health issue or anything just you're going through, um,
Yes.
is pausing because I don't do
Exactly.
that enough. I think nobody does that enough, right? Pausing and enjoying those small moments with your family, your friends, and knowing. So for me, I know people have probably heard this because I always talk about it, it's decluttering, right? Or organizing. I have a OCD about organizing the house.
Okay.
And so I'm
Yes.
always spending time when the kids come home, like just I need to get that back and I need to get place
Yes.
those things back and put their shoes under, and I'm just very meticulous about that. But pausing and knowing that that's not what's important. What they're going to value more is just me sitting down with them and maybe even watching TV with them, right? If I don't want to talk, but
Yeah.
just being with them, and that's so huge. So,
And that's
um,
what they're going to remember, right? They're going to
yeah,
remember that your mom like just sat with them and
yeah,
cuddled with them on the sofa. And but I was like you, like I was exactly the same way. I was going from one thing to another. Okay, let's get going. Homework, extracurricular. And then when my first form of treatment was chemo, and I physically and mentally could not move fast. My brain wasn't working fast. I couldn't speak fast. I couldn't move fast. And so I was forced to go slowly. And honestly, I was like, wow, this is really nice. My kids would come home and
ah,
my girls, and I think I convinced my son too, to sit on the sofa and we'd watch Gilmore Girls and we'd watch episode after episode. And I was like, I just felt so full of love. And I realized, love doesn't mean doing things like chasing things, getting the things done off our list. It's just slowing down and appreciating the moment and the experience of it all.
yeah. And the fact that you even said earlier about cancer, I think it was the nurse that, cancer should not stop you, or build that level of fear in you such that you stop achieving the goals that you want or doing the things that you love, right? Cancer is not something that is a barrier, but it's
Right.
something that you can, accept, embrace, and move
Yeah.
forward and live the rest of your life with.
Yeah.
It's just
Absolutely.
part of you, and that's
You.
once we
Yeah.
start accepting that, I think that's as a society, that's what that shift needs to happen, right?
Exactly. And I love how you reiterated that point. It's learning to live through cancer, right? Not after cancer. It's learning to live
Through
through
cancer.
it.
Hmm.
And the other thing I often say to my clients, which is from the Cancer Journey Institute and in their book, is the C for cancer is a call to change. I'm going to repeat that. The C for cancer is a call to change. You're not meant to stay the same after your cancer, but it's figuring out how you want to change. What do you want to let go of? What do you want to surrender?
Yeah. No, that's what, I know you've given a lot of advice, so I don't, but I want to kind of summarize it in, for people living busy lives and stuff. Sometimes it's hard to stop and think and
Yes.
slow down. Like, what kind of advice can you give everyone for dealing with this day to day and dealing with, and it doesn't have to be themselves, but it can be family members that are always on their minds, even while at
Mhm.
work. And
Mhm.
sometimes I feel when I see colleagues, it's almost like they experience burnout because their mind has been taken over with these thoughts. So, what
Right.
kind of advice could you give them?
I think have a self care practice. Definitely create a self care practice. and whatever that means to you, whether it's like meditating, prayer, exercise, but really making time at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to have that time for yourself. And it is possible. It doesn't have to be a long amount of time. It could be 5 minutes, but scheduling that into your day, I think it's communicating your feelings. We've talked a lot about feelings today. I think it's communicating your feelings with those you trust. I think it's having a support system and being okay to ask for what you want and what you need.
Right.
That's hard.
That
That's,
is hard. That is
yeah.
hard. You know, at the beginning, you said something about support system, and you said, you were selective about,
Yes.
okay, your family and then those close friends.
Mhm.
That goes back to something, I always advocate about is this is also a time, doesn't matter what health struggle you're going through, to not have those toxic people around you, because if
Yes.
you're letting them in, that is
Yes.
going to destroy your journey. It really
Yeah,
is. So
absolutely.
to be mindful of who's around you and who your
Yes.
support system is.
Absolutely. I loved that you brought that up. And I think I saw your talk on that about
Mhm.
boundaries,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's another call to change, right? Call to change means what are you willing to what are you willing to put up with? And what have you decided you don't need to in order to preserve yourself and for your own well being? And so that's exactly what I was talking about is having boundaries and being okay with that.
Right.
Being okay with that, being okay with saying, no, you can't visit actually. It's not a good time. Or, no, I won't pick up the phone call or
Yeah.
go for, you're inviting me out for a drive. No, thank you, and being okay with that versus judging ourselves or shaming ourselves and feeling bad about it. It's not helpful. So letting go of that is important.
Right. And making your own decisions. You know, this journey should be a strengthening journey, and just strengthening your own and strengthening and having control over yourself, right?
Yeah,
Building
yeah,
that control rather than losing control. Many of us
absolutely.
lose control in these health issues or mental health issues,
Right.
but trying to regain that control over yourself, that's important.
That's a great point. And I think that lack of control makes us feel powerless. And
Yeah.
when I talk about empowerment or going to power, it's regaining what we have control over and owning it and making those decisions that are for our well being and not for the well being of others.
Right. You wrote an article, or I saw an article about you. You said something that really touched me, and it was so simple. It was, don't be ashamed, be open. Is that how
Yeah.
you said it? Don't be ashamed, be
Yeah.
open.
And that those were my dad's words to my mom when she was diagnosed before he died.
And
And
I
so
just got goosebumps again, because I mean, that is really the essence of everything, right? It's kind of being ashamed is almost like what we were brought up with, like, be ashamed of this,
yes,
to be ashamed because you didn't become an engineer, be ashamed because
yes,
you didn't, you have
yes,
this happen to you, or you were too short, or you I was given the
yeah.
short
Or
one,
did you get married
whatever it
at
was, or
yeah,
you're too colored, like whatever
yeah,
the issue was, we were ashamed about everything, right?
yeah,
And it's time we're not ashamed and we are
absolutely.
open. And Shalene, I feel like we need to start a movement about that, because
Yes,
that is such a
absolutely.
simple yet beautiful saying. And I think that's
Honestly,
what attracted me to you, is when I
yeah,
read that, I said, this is someone I have to get on my podcast.
yeah,
And I know I chased you,
yeah,
to
yeah.
be on, because it was such a powerful statement. And I just knew you were such a beautiful person after I read
Thank
that.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you for saying that. But it's been a process, right? Just like
Right.
you've acknowledged, it's been a
Yeah.
process to be able to be open. And I got a lot of resistance, not only from myself, but from others. I got pushback to say, why do you need to talk about this? Like, it's
Yeah.
done, it's over. But that's not the point. I'm not talking about it for myself. I'm talking about it because I know with 100% clarity that every other person going through cancer or struggles is feeling the exact same thing of isolation and loneliness and panic. And so if I can help one person, then it's worth me opening up. It's not about me, it's about what can be done with this and how can we get stronger together?
You summed it up. Isolation, loneliness, and panic.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we don't, like you said, we don't talk about these things because they're kind of taboo. Who wants to admit? I mean, it's so funny that we're talking about loneliness because this morning's session, she was like, I feel, regret. So we kind of explored regret. And then she was pausing and she was like, I don't know what I feel. There's more. And so I pulled out this map and I read all these emotions. And she said, it's loneliness. And even for her to highlight that it's loneliness, naming your emotion, she was like, aha. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, so what are you taking from that? And then we have a conversation about loneliness. But it's just befriending all of it, right? And being okay with that vulnerability.
I love that. Thank you, Shelyna. There's a lot of healthcare professionals that I interact with day to day.
Yes.
Healthcare providers, whether you're nurses, optometrists, any administrative staff, you're anywhere where you're dealing with people day to day, but you're also dealing with your own emotions and your own cancer journeys or family member cancer journeys. And I'm sure many of them did not know that there are cancer coaches like yourself out there.
Yes.
And I'm sure some of them have heard now how beautiful you are as a person. Tell us where they can find you if they want to reach out for support, for advice,
Yeah.
for you to be their cancer coach. Where can they find you?
Absolutely. So my company's name is called A Mindful Path, and they can reach me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is called A Mindful Path Coach, or they can email me at Shelyna, Shelyna, at rogers.com. And I'd love to set up a call. I do offer complimentary coaching sessions because, like we talked about, it's a new thing. Not everybody knows it. And so I do want everybody to kind of experience it and then decide for themselves if we're a good fit and if it feels like we can move forward together.
Yeah. And I encourage everybody to, follow Shelyna on Instagram because I follow you and sometimes I need to hear your advice. Sometimes you'll post something and I'm like, I needed that today. So, keep doing what you're doing because you are impacting all of us. So thank you, Shelyna, for your time today. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate you inviting me, and I appreciate you doing what you're doing. I think it's having incredible impact, and you're opening up conversations and you're breaking stigmas. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in. If you want to catch more episodes of Uncover Your Eyes, make sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. To learn more about me, follow me on Instagram at dr.Meenal Agarwal. Until next time, keep those eyes uncovered.